David Sampson is here today, and I will tell you again before we get started, because there are a lot of people competing in this space, and people are now noticing the David Sampson Nothing Personal podcast because, among many other reasons, there are a whole lot of topics for all the people talking sports, everywhere that they're talking sports. The content game has more people yammering than ever before, and many of them are afraid of some of the subject matter that David Sampson tackles with delight because it makes him think, it simulates his curiosities. It is the hardest stuff beyond legal and business. He's talking about it in a way that others aren't. So I encourage you to check out the Nothing Personal podcast on the LeBatard and Friends Network. Before we get started on the topics du jour, though, David, because you're very good about sports business, obviously, I've said that before. But somebody named Washed Riley, this is his general attitude about the Heat, a Twitter account saying, Washed Riley writes of me, I don't think there is a media personality in sports as hypocritical as Le Batard is with Micky, Arison, and the Heat. And what he's referencing there is me making fun of sports fans who want Micky Arison to spend more money than anyone does in sports to get them all of the best players going well over the luxury tax. And I understand why they want that. And I also understand why Micky Arison says, you know what, I've paid $50 million in luxury taxes, most recently in 2020. When I think we're really close, I'll spend some. But no, I'm not going to be the Golden State Warriors and go deep, deep into the tax. So, David, you have familiarity with the business. You tend to side with owners. I want Micky Arison to spend all his money buying me players for my media business. So I want to be clear on that. Micky Arison is a bum and a jerk for not giving me all his money for my entertainment and my business. To be clear, Washed Riley, you asshole. But your thoughts are what here, Riley? Your thoughts are what here, Sampson, on the business of what I'm talking about?
Micky Arison has been losing money with the Miami Heat year after year after year, and you may find that hard to believe, but it's absolutely true. He does pay tax, but above that, operationally, he loses money, and he used to be able to support it with Carnival, which, as you know, has been in the tank because of COVID. It's rebounded a little bit now. He doesn't owe you a thing. As a matter of fact, Micky Arison has done for you more than almost any other owner in basketball other than Jerry Reinsdorf in terms of the number of rings you've had since it started with Dwayne Wade. I guess the first one may have been 2006. So for you to have any complaints about Micky, he's got to be one of the 2 or 3 best owners of all time. And I hate the fact that I had to share a market with him because he did nothing but make me look bad every single year I was in Miami.
But won't he recoup the money that you're saying he loses every year if he someday sells the team? Like, won't he get that all back tenfold?
Yeah, but he's giving the team to Nick.
That's true.
So that they're not going to recognize the increase in asset valuation because he wants to pass the team down to his son. So he's going to be dead. So no, he doesn't look at it that way.
You have you got to have some expensive hobby. You don't have an expensive hobby?
I have risky hobbies.
Yeah.
But not necessarily. It's not expensive to go skydiving.
Samson, why are you killing Micky Arison?
Oh, I'm not. Just time is.
I mean, he was as matter of fact about it as that Navy
he'll
submarine
be dead.
guy.
Like, wait, what?
That Navy submarine guy who came on yesterday. He's like, yeah, whatever hope you got about pinging sound, they're all dead. And Sampson's here with the nihilism of sports to say, well, Micky Arison will never get the $5 billion for his team. It'll be a nice mausoleum that Nick can build him because he'll be dead. That is grim what you're doing there.
It's extremely true. There are teams that want to pass on. So what happens, a team like the Mets, when Fred Wilpon sold the Mets, Jeff Wilpon would have enjoyed taking over the Mets from Fred when Fred passes away. And I love Fred. I don't want him to pass away, but he will. Everyone does. But they didn't have agreement amongst the partners and the family members. With the Arison group, it's Nick. And Nick wants the team. Nick is getting the team. And from an estate planning standpoint, he doesn't have to sell in order to get his estate in line because of the other assets he has. So he has this all figured out. So he doesn't look at the fact that his team is worth $3 billion or 3.4 or 4.3. He looks at the fact that he's writing checks every year. And what's the fun of writing checks every year? It's not fun at all. Dan, it would be the equivalent of you starting Metalark and you wanting to write checks every year to keep everyone employed, to bring on new people, to give people raises with reckless disregard to the fact that you're supporting people.
So basically what I'm doing.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Not that reckless.
I mean, look at the cast we've got today. Look at the tattered remains of my career as I look into the other room. And I got Chris Cody as the skipper. Chris Cody's in charge. This is no offense to Tony, Roy, and Jeremy. I'm just saying I've never done the show I'm doing today before. This is a first to work with this crew of people. That's the tattered remains of my entire Meadowlark career.
I think you had this crew a couple weeks ago, but we had a mean too. So we lost a mean.
Where is
addition by
everyone?
subtraction?
That's a good
Where
question.
is everyone?
Oh, just vacation policy. And then leaving me to sound to the audience like I'm the jerk because I complain about employees for content. I'm the jerk because we've got unlimited vacation.
I got a week one coming up next week. Oh, beautiful cruise, Alaska.
Well, you only give unlimited vacation because that's what all companies are doing now because they don't want to pay unused vacation time to those when they leave the company. But ironically, no one ever leaves your company.
Is that why? But is that why we're doing that? That's the first time I'm learning of that. I thought we were just being nice. I thought we were having a loose. I thought we were being loose with the rules. Just like, hey, we got a nice environment. People can come and go as they please.
That is you're adorable. That actually is funny that you think that the no limit vacation policy is you and Skipper being these great lads.
Samson, I am not kidding you when I say that you are informing me of this. I am on air right now. This is not a joke. I legitimately thought, yeah, we're a nice company. We let the employees come and go as they please. That's a nice thing to do.
No, it's actually for your benefit.
And yet Dan's always here. Look at you. How about you?
Yeah. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Dan.
No, I'm going to go on vacation next week, too. Now, what? I mean, if I don't get to take vacation, Samson, can you come do the show for me down here?
I will always come be there. I just won't necessarily want to do it with Mike every day.
Well, he's got a God complex that's problematic at the moment. So same for everyone here. Yes, we're working on that. He's taking a step back, so far back that he's not here today. Because
now that's too far back. I think that we have to show some leadership here. Just to take a step back means just to relax a little bit. It doesn't mean don't come to work.
David,
it is work that we do, isn't it? Every day.
This is not work. This is fun. I have a lot of fun. David, you're as neurotic a person as if someone said to me, "Who's the most neurotic?" And I don't know you that well, but from what I've heard you talk about yourself, you're very neurotic. I want to know what your thoughts are on this whole submarine thing. Like, have you put yourself what it would be like for you to be there? Like, how are you experiencing all this?
I would be saying, oh, yeah, this is happening. It's so would I ever spend, I have an offer on the table currently to go to space and run a marathon in space.
What?
Shut up, excuse me? What are you talking about?
No. This can't be a real thing.
I have an offer.
What do you mean?
From whom?
It's such a good question. Who's making these offers? What is the offer? Give us the specifics.
Here is the current offer on the table that I'm contemplating. I'm saying this for the first time publicly.
I can't believe this is a real thing. Hold on. Before we go down this path, did any of you know it was possible to run a marathon in space?
Certainly not. Isn't the whole thing you can't? I'm so confused by how anybody can make this offer to David Sampson.
Do you have any competing offers?
No, I don't.
So no leverage.
Dave, is it a treadmill that you're going to be running on like a space station? Are you going to the moon to run this? Like, what is it?
So I love where your head's at, Tony. Yes, it is on a treadmill. What you do is you go to space the same way you'd go down to the Titanic. And when you get there, you get on a treadmill. You run 26.2 miles when you're strapped in, because otherwise you can't stay on a treadmill. And then you go back down to Earth, and you've run a marathon in space.
So what were your chances of actually doing this before this submarine thing, and what are your chances of doing this now in terms of your willingness to do it?
So what I'm waiting to understand, this isn't happening until 2025 or 26. And there's a bunch of training you have to do, and there's a bunch of approvals that have to take place because they're going to try to regulate it in a way they didn't regulate this submarine that was built at Radio Shack. But this is going to be the real deal. And the only concern I have is the water stops. what is it going to be like when I need to take a break in space? Because in a marathon, you can sort of take a break. How will that work with my body and what my nutrition plan will be? But the possibility of being one of the few people, this is what I love, doing things that anyone could do, but not everyone does. That's what a space marathon is. That's what the marathon was from the summit of Kilimanjaro. Anyone can do it, but people are just smart enough to choose not to. But I love doing it. I love the risk. That's why I love skydiving. I love the possibility of going right to the edge and doing things that make me uncomfortable. And running a marathon in space would be it. So if I had an opportunity to go to the Titanic, and if I were obsessed with it and it interested me, I would 100% do it. Totally aware of the risks. That said, when I saw the sort of poppycock sort of operation they have, I would have waited for something a little bit more reliable, but I absolutely would have taken that risk.
Dave, are they going to train you like an astronaut to go up there? Or are you going to have to do like the G-force thing where your face kind of gets like smushed up? Like, what's the training?
The thing where you go to sleep for like 3 months and then wake up there.
That's like a mission to
No,
Mars.
that's Austin Powers. You're talking about the vomit rocket.
Yeah,
what's it
exactly.
called?
The slingshot
when
or whatever.
You go on an actual plane and it keeps going down and up and you get zero gravity. No, I will not do that. Although I love roller coasters, but that sort of training doesn't interest me. I'm just more curious about what the ride will be like up to space, what the spaceship will be like, and what sort of mechanics will be used, how long it will take, what the price will be. I have an idea of what the price will be, and I can only say that I'm going to need a raise, Dan.
Samson, they've got a ton of follow-up questions, none of which would be my follow-up question, right? Because Chris Cody wants to ask you about just you on a roller coaster and how it's a bit
hands up. You're not a hands up guy.
Yeah, but I need to know more about this offer. Like I have a lot of questions about what this costs and the stupidity of what we're talking about. Because you cannot do this.
I do is stupid.
You cannot do this. You must not do this.
We have no contract items or stipulations that say that I cannot do it.
Hold on, David. We ended there on time. I'm sorry that like Dan will end on Dan. We'll bring you back for this next segment.
Okay. I didn't put my timer on. I'm so sorry.
I've got a lot that I want to get to. Samson is out here saying the Marlins need to lie about their attendance right now. Start lying to everybody about their attendance. So we'll get to that in a second. You need to build the business through lying. That's David Samson's advocacy. Just tell people that 15,000 more people are there than are actually there to create momentum. But before we get to that, tell me about this stupid space offer. They didn't call you looking for you, did they? Or you called them and said, how much does this cost? And they said hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars and whatever it costs to get to space and take a treadmill into space.
I've got this being an Instagram ad.
No, it's not an Instagram ad. The person who's doing it is the one who's the race director when I did 7 marathons in 7 days on 7 continents. His name is Richard Donovan, and he's developing and will be the first race director of the first ever space marathon. and it's going to happen. And he called me because I was part of the World Marathon Challenge, one of only 200 people to have run 7 marathons in 7 days on 7 continents. And we're the reason why the 7th marathon is in Miami. We brought business to Miami. Do you hear that, mayors and commissioners? We brought the World Marathon Challenge to Miami. He called me and said, hey, we're going to be doing a marathon in space, and I think it'd be perfect for you. And I said, hell yeah. So I am number 1 on the list. Once they get approved, he will make the call. The pricing is not firm yet because we don't exactly know where we're getting the parts to the spaceship, but all that's going to come together, and we're going to do it.
You're number 1 on his list of suckers, is what you are.
No, I don't agree. It's not a sucker thing.
I'm kidding.
How cool would it be to be in space? Think about the content doing a marathon in space.
But what's next for this guy? This guy, 7 continents. Now we're going to space. Like, what's next? Run a marathon underwater.
Space is the ultimate
like, he's
frontier,
just doing, this guy just seems like the guy. Like, I like racing. Where's all the wacky places we can race?
He's the race director for the North Pole Marathon, the Antarctic Marathon, the World Marathon Challenge. So he does these cool things. And no, he has acknowledged that this is his end. It ends in space. The minute the space marathon happens, the first one, that's the end of his career.
Is there anything else happening on this trip up to space? Because this seems like a big time waste.
I feel like Roy could run a marathon in space.
Roy, I'm asking your wife to join me.
Whoa. What is that?
What does that mean?
That's offensive.
What does that mean?
What does that mean?
She's a marathoner.
She runs, right?
Does she run?
I want her to do her 2nd marathon in space because I think, Roy, you'd love it. And the training is not as bad.
Roy's also a marathon man. Hit me, Roy. Fist me.
I mean,
My man.
Hey, yo.
this is an issue of, I don't know if you've seen the 3rd episode of Black Mirror, but we've got a calamity on our hands here, a Black Mirror situation. And don't take that offensively, Roy.
I might.
Well, if you see it, I think you might, because what Samson just did is offensive. He's going to try and steal your wife while you're in space. Linked to that 3rd black. Yes, that's what you just did. Don't shake your head. No, what you did was publicly disrespectful.
Absolutely not. Roy, if you don't back me up right now, you and I are going to have a problem.
Now it gets worse.
Wow.
Sounds like I'm going to have to join you on this trip to space to make sure everything's kosher.
Mr. Steal Your Wife.
I've got 3 treadmills.
Believe me, there's no time for hanky-panky. It's about a marathon in space.
All right, I got a couple of questions. At Le Batard Show, anyone younger than your grandparents' age ever used the phrase hanky-panky? Put that on the poll at Le Batard Show. Also, are there still Radio Shacks? Because I did wonder this when he mentioned that the parts from the submarine were from Radio Shack. Can I physically go to a Radio Shack anymore?
I think they're done. I think they went bankrupt.
With Blockbuster? Like all around
No,
the
there's
same
one.
time?
There's one
Circuit
Blockbuster
City.
left. It's like in Alaska or
There are.
something.
I think there's a couple Radio Shacks.
There must be a Radio Shack. There must be a number of Radio Shacks that I could still walk into if I want to build a rocket or a submarine.
I believe that's exactly what they did for the submarine that went down to the Titanic. Didn't he admit that he built it from all parts that you can find at a Radio Shack?
I appreciate you helping us with the younger demo that we continue to be somehow popular with the phrases like poppycock and Radio Shack, angling for the lane that Greg Cody presently occupies.
No.
I mean, yes, that's where we are. Yes, Meadowlark needs to carry more old people around. Something I want to get to with you, David, because I'm worried. I think this movie segment that you and Adnan do is very good. However, a lot of young people around here don't know the movies you're talking about, and I don't know how to bridge the gap because they don't care about movies that are 15 years ago, no matter how great they are made. And one of the things I'd like the video crew to get ready for me soon is from the movie Malice, Alec Baldwin, because I recognize recently that Mike Ryan is becoming Alec Baldwin in this movie. And in this movie, there's like a 5-minute scene that I will play later in this hour. There's like a 5-minute scene where Alec Baldwin, with a giant arrogance, says to your face a memorable soliloquy that reminds me these days of Mike Ryan, who's taking a step back because his ego
It's 2 minutes, Dan, not 5.
Well, we'll get to it in a second, but my question to you about most memorable movie scene monologues. I think Alec Baldwin has 2 of the top 10 ever. Maybe 2 of the top 5 I've ever seen ever.
Is the concern that you're worried that when people in the container or your audience, if they've never heard of something, that they're disinterested in continuing to engage with the show, that we're losing audience? Is that the concern?
No, what I lose the interest. They're all in their phones when you guys are talking about your movies because they don't know the movies you're talking about. They don't have any human connection to what you're talking about. They're just a bunch of words.
So, but that's not reflective of your audience. Your audience, what they're interested in when Adnan and I do content is why Adnan is so condescending and so ridiculous in his movie opinions and so just rude about mine and the emotion that I feel about movies. It doesn't matter if they've heard of them. And it's not as though we're choosing movies that no one's people shouldn't have heard of. It's not these crazy movies that didn't do well. These are very, very famous movies. I don't think we have to kowtow to the 4 people who don't come to work often, who go on their phones because they're bored, when people vote with their thumbs and with downloading. And obviously you're the #1 sports podcast in the world. So clearly you're doing something right. And if people who work for you don't recognize it, I think they're sort of missing the point.
I am trying to straddle the fence between being a deteriorating, aging host with an executive producer who doesn't want to be executive producer anymore and has a God complex, and trying to reach young people, even though he's a dad who secures the perimeter, and growing young people like Tony and Jeremy Taché that make me feel like today I've got the Heat roster that won 11 games for Pat Riley one season after Alonzo Mourning's
Tough defense, though, we play.
I mean,
But
it was
don't be condescending to young people, Dan. You don't need to be. They're on it. They understand what you're doing and they appreciate what you're doing and they're entertained by what you're doing.
I don't believe that.
But the numbers speak for themselves. Do you think that the money that was given to you by DraftKings was because that you offend 50% of the best demographic?
No, we're billing the hell out of things. We've got the best billing podcast anywhere in sports by leaps and bounds.
You got that right.
I do have that.
And
right.
that Heat team won 15 games, Dan, not 11.
Okay, who was on that Heat team? Is this the roster that I have today?
Marcus Banks, Earl Barron, Mark Blunt, Daquan Cook. I see a Daquan Cook somewhere in here. We got some shooters. We got Afrini Hardaway.
I feel like I'm Shane Battier, somebody that everybody.
Who's Afrini Hardaway?
Afrini?
I feel like I'm Shane.
Who is Afrini Hardaway?
I was trying to read fast. UD was on the team. Luke Jackson, Bobby Jones, The Matrix, Shawn Marion, Zoe, Shaq, Smush Parker, Chris Quinn,
Wait a minute.
D Wade,
Wait a minute.
Jason Williams, Darrell Wright. I mean, stacked roster.
The currently suspended Memphis head coach, Afrini Hardaway.
I have no recollection of Anthony Hardaway on a Heat team. When the hell was that?
I'm looking at it right here. He was number 7.
Yeah, he was on the Heat.
He was on the Heat, July 18th, 1971. Looking up on Basketball Reference right now.
Definitely not 1971.
Tony, go sit in the penalty box. Just go ahead for all of it. 1971.
He was born in 1971.
Oh, my bad.
That's what I said.
Oh, man.
I thought you were doing the 1971 roster.
Everyone thought that's what Tony said.
Regardless,
There
go
was
sit in
no
the
Heat roster
go.
in 71.
You know what? Do this for me. Go
Well,
run.
I listen to you, Dan. I'm gonna go. I
run a
listen to you.
marathon on the moon in the penalty box.
pants.
Run a marathon on the moon in the penalty box right now. As your penalty for calling him and Freeney Hardaway on a day I need you because I'm thinned out. Go sit. I mean, that's offensive.
I'm like Mike Beasley, though, Dan. I'm going to put up shots.
All
I
right.
might not make all of them, but I'm going to put them up.
Real
for you.
hoopers know it's Anthony.
Today's as thin as you'll be.
Go
Don't
run.
you like it when it's thin? Aren't you worried when it's too overcrowded?
Yes. Oh, yes.
I thought we had meetings about this.
Yes.
Too overcrowded bothers you.
Yes. It's, well, in general, it bothers me and the audience because we got too many people at microphones.
Now I have room to cook today, and I have takes on Mike's take on Wembanyama. Can I get to that, or should I do it later?
We'll do it in a second. We'll get to that clip from Malice in a second as well. But why should the Marlins lie about attendance, and how dirty were you about lying about attendance?
Oh, filthy. It doubled it sometimes. We wanted to pretend that there was momentum, pretend that there were people coming to games, so then maybe people would actually come to games when we were playing well. When you have an opportunity the way the Marlins had against the Blue Jays, you've won 5 in a row, 8 in a row, you're 10 games over, whatever you are, and you announce 9,800 people. Are you out of your mind? It's absurd. Miami is a place that people want to go where it's cool. And I don't mean air conditioning. They want to have fun. And instead, 9,800 people, forget it. You got to announce 18 at least.
when you were doing this, and like, is it an email? Like, how does the attendance actually get reported? Like, is it somebody from your team sending an email to MLB? Or are you just importing it into like some chart or something?
He has done all of this. I encourage everybody to listen to the Lost Pandemic Files with Mike Ryan, where he showed you the innards of the Marlins business in a way I've never heard business deconstructed. But go ahead and explain it again here, David.
I just really, my question there was, did you ever get behind, like, off the record comments from the league of like, yeah, in your bra?
No, they loved it because it would help their average attendance and their total attendance for the industry, which they could then announce. Attendance today was up 4.5% over last year. Hip, hip, hooray. Bud Selig used to calculate attendance with his pencil and would call us when our attendance was too low, and then started like the commissioner's discretionary tickets, so you could give tickets away at $1 each to help attendance. So instead of actually giving the tickets away, we just bought them ourselves. We didn't make, so what we'd do is we'd get a call. The call would be, here's what the actual attendance is. And then it would come to me every single game in the 5th inning. And then I would say, all right, the attendance is blank. And it would be based on someone's birthday. So today the attendance would be 18005 because it's my son Caleb's birthday. His favorite number is 5. He turns 20 years old, so I'd honor him. Or we did it with the height of people. We would always do so often. 19,769. We did that quite a bit. So we would give you a number, and then we would pay $1 for every ticket that didn't exist, because you had to do that for revenue sharing purposes.
There are many, many sports things that I want to get to with David Samson. How about this? A few days after the finals, Samson is already saying Pat Riley game has passed him by. He's already 3 games ago, nobody was saying this. Now David Samson is here to tell you game has passed Pat Riley by. I want to, again, talk about what he said at the beginning of this segment, which is Micky Arison should be free to get richer. He's one of the greatest owners ever. Doubling down on what I'm saying again, I'm not defending Micky Arison. I want him to go deep, deep into the tax, even if it costs him all his cruise ships. For me. Just so that you understand, that's something I deeply want him to do. I want him to give me all of his money so I could watch Heat games that have all of the players. I would like to be the Warriors for the last 10 years, not caring about the tax. I don't know how that's defending Micky Arison. Micky Arison doesn't think similarly to me. Micky Arison says $50 million in taxes is enough for me. How does that make
worse? He doesn't care about what you think, actually.
I disagree.
He really doesn't. I'm sorry, Dan. I mean, you're very influential in Miami. I'll grant you that. A lot of roar, more reach than ever. But you think Micky Arison's making luxury tax decisions based on whether or not you appreciate what he's done for you?
Whether Mike appreciates it or
but
not.
that's different. That is different than saying he doesn't care what I think. But because if I were to come here and every day excoriate Micky Arison for running his team poorly, I think he would not like that very much.
You do come here.
I do come here, man.
You think he'd call you?
Yes.
Would you take the call?
Yes.
And what would you say?
I'll tell you something else, David. I'll go a step further. The relationships I have with Stan Van Gundy and Pat Riley are born at first of me being deeply critical of them in print and in public. They actually respected it more than ass kissery. Like the reason I became close to those people is because they called me after I scorched them and were like, "You're an asshole." And
that's how our relationship started, Dan.
Yeah, so I don't understand why people think. I don't understand.
Is that how you start all your relationships with everybody?
Yes. Yes.
It's just
You wonder why he's alone all the time.
Let me play this clip because I do believe, and Tony will spend this entire segment running on the moon, and we'll get his thoughts at the end of this segment on whatever it is. After 12 minutes of running, we will get Tony's thoughts when he returns from the moon.
Looks like it's difficult to run on the moon. Oh, now it's not.
No, it seems inconsistent. I have a lot of questions about running on the moon, just like David Samson does, and it's not just water related. You're telling me you've got to be strapped in? Is that makes it easier to run? Like that doesn't even seem like it'd be a real marathon in terms of endurance. You'd just sort of be bouncing out there. It'd be super easy.
No, when you're strapped in, you're not bouncing. That's the whole point.
Depends.
So it's just a regular treadmill marathon?
It's a treadmill. Have you ever been on a treadmill?
Yeah, it's not any different.
Listen, I'm not trying to impugn your body right now, but have you ever been on a treadmill?
Oh, whoa.
I'm not impugning your shape.
No need to body shame me. Unnecessary.
I was asking a question.
Yes, I've been on a treadmill is the answer to your question.
Jesus.
Do you consider it a workout?
Yes, always.
Therefore, doing 26.2 on a treadmill, strapped in or not, is still a workout.
Do you attach the little red strap to your belt buckle, or do you live dangerously?
You live dangerously because what are you going to do? Float through space like George Clooney?
Are you going to bounce around? What are you telling me? It's the same exact exertion?
Yes, it is the exact same exertion.
Okay.
You need goo, you need nutrition, you need a plan. It's the same thing.
Let's play this clip for the audience. Again, this is a movie that's 30 years old. And just to give you a little bit of context, because I really do like how Adnan and David think about the movies. They have discerning and very different tastes. But I maintain that this is one of the great monologues in the history of the movies. From Malice in 1993, Alec Baldwin has just botched a surgery. He is a surgeon who is very arrogant, very full of himself, and he's in a room full of lawyers, and he's being questioned in front of a mentor who did not give him a job that he wanted as the head of surgery. So I think Roy knows this scene, but I'm guessing that most of the people in the shipping container have no idea what this scene is. Let's play that clip for the audience.
Dr. Kessler, 7 months ago, the position of chief of surgery became available at Mass General. Did Jed Hill seek this position? Yes, he did.
Did you give the position to Jed?
Excuse me. My client's name is Dr. Hill.
Forgive me, did you award the position to Dr. Hill?
No.
Why not?
Well, he was certainly qualified.
But you didn't give him the job.
There were many other candidates.
Surgeons more qualified?
This isn't a trial, Mr. Riley.
Dr. Kessler, during Dr. Hill's residency at Mass General, he wrote several quarterly evaluations. Evaluations to be read and reviewed by hospital administrators, department heads.
Yes.
I'm looking at one right now, dated June 15th, 1982, and bearing your signature. It's coming around. I'd like to read from page 3, paragraph 4. While Jed Hill consistently remains the most skilled and the brightest of our residents, we should not ignore what I and several of his colleagues observed to be an indulgence of the God complex. God complex. That's not a typo, is it? It says God complex.
That was written a decade ago.
What's a God complex?
How did you get this information? This is privileged
Dr.
information.
Kessler, what's a God complex?
It's a term that has no clinical meaning or at all. Doctors throw it around and...
Sir, all due respect, but knock it off. What did you mean in this evaluation when you said Dr. Hill had a God complex?
The power to heal can be an enormous thing. An enormous thing. To save a life, to get blood flowing into cells and vital organs, if a person can do that, and if one can do it as exceptionally as Dr. Hill, it's not uncommon for a person like that to begin to believe that he can do anything. The power to heal can be like a drug.
Like a drug, you say? Would it be uncommon for a person with a God complex to reject the advice of others?
No.
Would it be uncommon for such a person to proceed on a course that others might reject, if only out of a sense of godlike power?
Oh, I think now you're vastly overstating.
Is that why you didn't give Dr. Hill the job?
There were a number of other factors.
Is that why you removed a healthy ovary without any scientific diagnosis?
Don't you address my client, Mr. Riley.
Do you have a God complex?
This is not acceptable.
No, let him address me.
Jed?
No, it's about time I got to give some answers here.
Here comes Mike
Stop
Ryan.
typing. This is off the record.
The question is, do I have a God complex?
Dr. Kessler says yes.
Which makes me wonder if this lawyer has any idea as to the kind of grades one has to receive in college to be accepted at a top medical school. If you have the vaguest clue as to how talented someone has to be to lead a surgical team. I have an MD from Harvard. I am board certified in cardiothoracic medicine and trauma surgery. I have been awarded citations from 7 different medical boards in New England, and I am never, ever sick at sea. So I ask you, when someone goes into that chapel and they fall on their knees and they pray to God that their wife doesn't miscarry, or that their daughter doesn't bleed to death, or that their mother doesn't suffer acute neural trauma from post-operative shock, who do you think they're praying to? Now, you go ahead and read your Bible, Dennis, and you go to your church, and with any luck you might win the annual raffle. But if you're looking for God, he was in operating room number 2 on November 17th, and he doesn't like to be second-guessed. You ask me if I have a God complex? Let me tell you something. I am God. This sideshow is over.
It's so good. It's so good.
It's the number one.
It's number 1 of all time for you. Of all
Yes,
time.
It always has been. And I've actually done one of these on Nothing Personal. Yes, it is number 1. It is the best monologue, but you started it way too early. I'm not even sure anybody waited for it, but it was the Alec Baldwin part at the end. That's the monologue.
So
you
that
didn't need to set it up the way you set it up.
So that beat out
Thanks,
Glengarry Glenn Ross, huh?
That's another great one. Candidate for a top 10. Steak knives.
Do you have a top 5? Yes. Does Alec Baldwin? Let's do a top 5. Top 5 monologues in the history of the movies with David Sampson. At some point, we'll get to Pat Riley being washed, and we'll get to Rob Manfred being a total boob. Number 5.
Pulp Fiction. Samuel Jackson when he is the Big Kahuna Burger monologue. Outstanding.
Number 4.
Inglorious Bastards. The beginning of the movie with Christoph Waltz when he is in the farmhouse. It is riveting.
So 2 Tarantinos to open. Number 3.
Miles Teller in Whiplash. This is when he chooses his drumming and his work over his relationship with his girlfriend. This really hit home with me as it's a choice I've always made. It is a very interesting and meaningful monologue.
Number 2.
James Earl Jones describing what baseball is in Field of Dreams. He talks about, we used to play this. This is what they do at owners' meetings. Side note, Dan, if we have one more second. Baseball and Bud Selig with his people would put this on the video board at owners' meetings to get everyone excited about the fact that we had a season and what the season was like and when it was what they expect. And they'd play the James Earl Jones monologue.
And finally, number 1. We just did it.
Number 1 is Malice.
Yes. I'm sorry. I was distracted by Tony.
Al Pacino in Any Given Sunday.
Great monologue in the clubhouse, locker room, they call it.
And you didn't have Glengarry Glen Ross in there. You didn't put Glengarry Glen Ross
also in my top 10.
But not in your top 5. Tony has returned from running on the moon. Samson, we're going to keep you for one more segment because I do want to bang in.
Tony is huffing and puffing. And
sounds terrible.
Yes,
Tony, maybe a penny for your thought
Yes.
on how that was?
Yes.
Wow.
He did the penny thing before.
Not good.
Right.
That is, I am so sorry. Yes, give me all of your thoughts here, Tony.
Running a marathon in space is difficult.
He's the one in shape, too.
My wife has run a half marathon. I just ran a full marathon in space. It's obviously faster when you're up there because time doesn't exist in space. David can attest to that. One thing I saw on the way here to work today that I didn't think was going to make the show, I saw a billboard. That said milk hydrates faster than water. Who wrote that? A cow? That's bullshit.
It can't.
It can't. Give me some milk, please.
I will again encourage you to find Nothing Personal. It's starting to get awards. David Sampson, it's hard to do this by yourself, to be the lonely voice. And I know he's got Coke as his producer, but doing a show daily by yourself, there aren't that many who can do it well. And there certainly aren't any because Cowherd, Bayless, Stephen A., they are not tackling the subject matter that Sampson is. So let's just bang through some of your topics as quickly as possible here, going through sports. Give me your best 30 seconds on Pat Riley is washed.
You can't say you're going to run it back. No team runs it back. It's the worst plan ever. You're too loyal to your players. Not necessary. He's suffering from Haslam hangover.
They just ran it back and went to the finals.
They didn't win a ring. If the Celtics are willing to trade Marcus Smart, the Heat should be willing to trade Bam Adebayo.
Those are not the same player.
Those are not even close to comparable.
Those are not the same player.
Of course they're not the same players. I'm talking about the concept of running it back. No one runs it back. Even the Yankees didn't run it back when they were winning 3 in a row. You have a core, but you have to change around the edges.
I think that's essentially what running it back intends to mean. Like, there was plenty within that press conference that said there are going to be tweaks, there are going to be improvements, there are going to be things to make Jimmy's window better, and taking advantage of that. It's just, it might not be the giant splash of a theoretical Dame Lillard.
This is where we are with the Heat. I think this part of it is pretty clear. I think it's obvious that building this kind of championship defense, the one that was better against Jokic than any other, is important and matters. And also they have to get better at offense. But they cannot trade all of their defense, which is Bam, a real defensive player of the year, not Marcus Smart. Marcus Smart is heart and soul and guts and everything else, and he's just okay at defense.
Absolutely.
Bam is actually an elite defender who makes them championship elite at defense. You only trade that if you think you're bringing back more offense than he is at defense, David. And I don't trade it for Lillard because all I'm doing there is getting more offense, and I'm costing myself somebody who is integral at defense in a sport that doesn't measure it very well, but the Heat do measure it well.
Arison's not going to have an Ishbia complex. He's not going to have 4 max players. Just be ready for that. It's just never going to happen.
Well, should he then? Because this is the argument. This is the argument. When people say go after Arison, it's the argument now in a salary cap sport, David, is are you willing to fight the other owner where the dollars are? The Warriors have a good stadium deal. They will go well over the tax to protect their players, but Draymond just opted out. This is expensive. They're not championship ready if Draymond opts out on $27 million because costs are going up all over the place. What should Micky Arison be spending as you're calling him the greatest owner in South Florida sports history, someone who embarrassed you as an owner when you were doing the president of the Marlins stuff?
He should do exactly what he does, which he's willing to pay a small amount of tax, and when there's an opportunity, you can go over it on a temporary basis, but to sign a player where you're guaranteed dollar-for-dollar problems going forward for a player, Dame Lillard, he's great, but you're going to tell me that Dame Lillard all of a sudden is going to absolutely change, or Bradley Beal is going to absolutely change for Ishbia? Ishbia and the Suns are going to be like Steve Cohen and the Mets. They're never going to win a title. Ever, because they're trying to buy it and you can't do it.
Oh, but they will win every press conference in this time of year as people call Riley washed and say Ishbia is doing it the right way.
I've loved winning off-season press conferences. Guess what? It doesn't mean squat. It feels good. It's like a quick drug where it feels good for the moment and then it disappears. And if you don't do it again, you end up destitute on the street.
I was making fun of Manfred because of those Oakland reverse boycott quotes where he said he thought it was great. I thought it was really offensive coming from that grifter. And now he says of the Houston Astros, he says, well, maybe I erred in giving the players immunity. And I think he told Time Magazine that. What are your thoughts on him saying that? What should have been a much greater cheating scandal? Basically, a team won the World Series that was caught cheating and was penalized in a way that couldn't have been excessive enough.
We were all cheating, number one. Number two, I talked about this, so listen to today's Nothing Personal, but I'll sum it up quickly. Rob made a mistake to Time Magazine. He doesn't regret giving the players immunity because without immunity, no one would have known what actually happened. It was a deal cut with the union. It wasn't approved by all the players because Yankees and Dodgers players were pissed off. However, in order to get the Astros players to tell him what the hell happened, he had to grant them immunity or the union would not have let them speak. So he doesn't regret it. What he regrets is the fact that it's still a story. And so I would not have come out to Time Magazine and said that that was his big regret. In a world of regrets, that doesn't need to be a regret.
Pro Football Talk, I think it's Mike Florio, is reporting that an NFL player bet $8 million, lost $8 million last year gambling on sports, but not football. Has not named the player, and I don't know what that investigation is going to end up revealing. What were your thoughts when you saw that story?
Look out. You're in bed with gambling. And I don't mean you specifically, though you are too. We're all in bed with it. Every league decided that they're going to take the money. They're building sports books and stadia. The result is going to be that players are going to cheat the rules. They're going to break the rules. They're going to gamble on their own sport. It is a matter of time, not if. It's when you are going to have someone who does something to compromise the integrity of the on-field product, and then it'll get washed away in the sea of money that's coming into these leagues and these teams.
This guy stinks at gambling,
Yeah,
huh?
bad gambler. $8 million on a loss, buddy. Come on. Mix in a few chalk. Speaking of chalk, this milk.
What were the reported gambling losses on Mickelson? How bad a gambler is that guy? And he just washed it all away by just suckering the PGA.
Bailout.
I mean, what a bailout. What, David, we can't talk enough about the business of Phil Mickelson funding his gambling problem by just taking money from the Saudis and ruining golf.
Brilliant. How are you not giving him credit for finding a new revenue stream that can let him do what he loves to do? Everyone loves to gamble. Were we criticizing Michael Jordan for betting 25 grand a hole when he golfed? It's the same thing as you or not you, but the rest of us betting $1 on a hole. So what's the difference?
Phil Mickelson reportedly lost $40 million over a 4-year span gambling. That's amazing.
But he made 4 times that. And if that's his decision, I'm not as anti people spending money. If you want to go see the Titanic, go. You want to go to space, go. You want to gamble, go. And apparently people want to gamble because it's sprouting like weeds in an overgrown, unused arena or parking lot. Everyone does it. So give the people what they want, Ray Davies.
A Kinks reference? That's how you're trying to get younger? That you just referenced the Kinks.
Hell yeah.
What?
Don't say that people have never heard of the Kinks.
That's Lola, right?
Yes, that's Lola.
That's all I got for you.
I don't even know what Jeremy said. Lola, she was a showgirl?
No, that's a different.
Oh, you really got me?
Yeah.
Them too?
Yes.
Well, that's what he just did.
Yeah.
What is the old? Okay, earlier this week. This is how you're becoming Greg Cody. Earlier this
week. You got to
week.
stop saying that, or I'm gonna leave. Stop. I love Greg, but he's got his own lane. That is not my lane.
Well, this is why it's your lane. Greg Cody was asked earlier this week, anytime in history, a band that he would like to tour with. And his response was it the Gene Miller Band? It was. It was the early 1940s, late 30s.
Glenn Miller.
Glenn Miller. Excuse me. That's a fine for me. My bad for not knowing the.
I mean, it might as well be Gene.
I mean, Glenn.
What's
technically
your answer,
the Glenn
Dan?
Miller Orchestra?
Dan, I'll give you mine. What band would you want to tour with?
The Kinks, David.
Don't hide it with humor. My answer would be Queen.
I think the Rolling Stones in their prime would probably be pretty fun.
When you say touring with them, like following them around, watching them, or you're somehow performing? What's happening here?
You're playing bass.
I meant
performing.
I thought like hanging out with them before and after the show.
What do you have
and
us
being
doing? What do
backstage.
you have me slapping the bass? Like,
I had David as Eddie. Is it Eddie Mercury?
Holy shit!
Are you
serious?
Eddie
Hey, man.
Mercury.
Eddie Mercury?
His brother.
That's his brother. I'm telling you, he
Okay.
had a cousin
All right,
named
go
Eddie.
run,
48 hours.
go run on the
Mercury.
moon. Go run on the moon.
Oh, my
This
God.
is unbelievable. The crew I'm working
Eddie
with today.
Mercury.
Eddie Mercury and Anne Freeney Hardaway. Like this is
That's
what I'm. This is
amazing.
what I'm working to. Yeah, you should leave again, Tony. You should leave again. You're stepping into the seat.
Again, I need to captain this ship, Dan. What are you talking about? Who's carrying the boats around
You
here?
cannot keep sending people to the penalty box, Dan, because it's going to be just you, and you don't know what buttons to press.
David, explain to me the Manfred situation, please, because I can't believe that a commissioner optically is this Eddie Mercury. No, I know.
I can't. It
it's
happens, Dan. It
unbelievable.
happens.
In fact, can we get video? Can we get video to take Freddie Mercury's picture and just make him Eddie Mercury? Because that's a totally different rock star, Eddie Mercury.
Did he mix up Eddie Murphy with Freddie Mercury?
Or Eddie Murray?
Or Eddie Murray from Oreo over here.
I don't believe there's an Eddie Mercury.
The Manfred.
I think you should put Eddie Murphy on stage singing. Do people know that Eddie Murphy actually had a hit song?
Boogie
He
in
was
the
a
Butt.
singer.
What did you just say, Roy?
What? That was the name of one of his songs was Boogie in the Butt.
No, Party All the Time is the one that he's mentioning with Rick. What did you just do? Boogie in the Butt?
Yeah, that's one of his songs. That's legitimately one of his songs.
But it's not one of its hit songs.
It is a hit song.
Never heard of it.
Wow.
Roy,
Yeah.
are you joking right now?
I'm not joking.
Roy,
I am not joking. That is legitimately
Roy,
one of his
you
songs.
find for me proof. No. Proving for me that that's one of his songs is one thing. You called it a hit And I will not have that. That was not a hit. That's almost as bad as Eddie Mercury to say Boogie in the Butt by Eddie Murphy. What's that about, by the way?
Technically Boogie in your butt, so it's fine.
I would assume that it never cracked the top 50.
That is not a hit by anyone's definition. Roy right now is sinking into his own shame because...
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm not.
Roy, you find for me some proof there that was a hit. You find for me one sentence on the entirety of the internet that proves to anyone. I'll wait the rest of this segment. I'll just stare at you for the rest. I will waste the rest of David Sampson's time on this show looking at you, waiting for you to search the entirety of the internet and find me one fact that suggests that is a hit song.
Just search its top ranking. What was its top ranking?
No, he's not going to find. He's got to find something that proves it, not something that disproves it.
He also didn't even get the name right.
No, just awful.
How dare you?
No, how dare you? What I have this morning is Anne Freeney Hardaway.
That's honest mistake.
Eddie Mercury.
And Boogie in the Butt.